West Asia or Middle East in the extended version is crucial for trade across the world, especially oil and energy needs. As the situation escalates, there are concerns over Israel targeting oil infrastructure of Iran. The US website Axios has reported that Israeli officials are considering a significant retaliation to the Iranian attack within days that could target oil production facilities inside Iran and other strategic sites. Well, Iran is a major player in the global market, ninth largest oil producer. 4% of world oil production was from Iran. In fact, Iran holds around 10% of oil and 15% of world's proven gas resources. West Asia is a key for world's energy consumption, one of the most heavily militarized in the world. In fact, the escalation is likely to hit families and their plates across the world, including India. Look at this. The cycle of economic disruption often begins with the outbreak of war, which can trigger a cascading effect. Initially, the conflict may lead to oil supply disruptions, significantly impacting global energy markets as oil prices rise in response. The cost of crude oil surges, subsequently increasing transportation costs. This spike in logistics expenses then drives up commodity prices, contributing to broader inflationary pressures as the cost of living escalates. Households and businesses alike grapple with heightened economic uncertainty, resulting in a challenging escalation and a tight grip of what they may really be receiving into their homes. A challenging environment for growth and stability. The West Asia escalation means both global and Indian traders are bracing for prolonged disruption in trade. If you can change this page, as the vital Red Sea shipping route may remain inaccessible to global shipping lines for longer duration. Since the Red Sea crisis, India's trade drops with Israel by at least 63.5%, Jordan 38.5%, and Lebanon a 6.8% dip. Since the 2023 Red Sea crisis that started in October 2023, where Iran-backed Houthi rebels disrupted trade in the area, India's petrol exports have dropped by 37.56%. And as Middle East situation escalates, remember, India GCC trade 2023 accounted for $162 billion, 15% of India's total trade. India-Middle East trade exports include machinery, pharmaceuticals, textiles. Imports include oil, natural gas, fertilizers, and India has crucial trading ties, both worth billions, with Israel as well as Iran. And as we try to establish how is this going to be affecting you, your household, your plates, what does this escalation mean not only for the region but global trade? Dr. Swati Rao, who's an associate fellow at Manohar Parrikar IDSA, J.K. Tripathi, former ambassador, Arun Kumar Rai, who is a shipping and logistics expert with Everfast Freight, Dr. Vandana Singh, aviation sector expert, and Ambarish Baliga, who's a market expert, joins us just to be able to get that to you. Some of us just look at this as a war that's happening in Middle East or in West Asia, a war that is escalating, a war that has many stakeholders now at play, a war that sees now more countries included than ever before. Very often, we don't understand what the dynamics are at play, particularly how the impact is reaching right at our households. Well, first, let me just start with you at this point, Ambarish Baliga. What are you foreseeing with what's unfolded, not only over the last 24 hours, but over a week and for months now? How do you see the situation escalate beyond just the war or conflict zone, as we call it?
No, because see, whenever there's a geopolitical issue, we have seen that our markets react quite negatively. And this is basically because of the economic disruption which can happen if, again, I'm saying if the war escalates. I mean, there can be political changes, and more importantly, it also affects a lot of lives. So whenever I mean a war is confirmed to be localized, I mean we have seen that happening at in Russia, Ukraine. Initially, we had the skirmishes at with Israel itself right in the beginning, and that time it was expected to be more localized. So the markets bounced back. They had fallen, but they bounced back. But now, I mean, it seems that this can get, I mean, it can escalate going ahead, and because of which, I mean, I suppose people across the globe are quite cautious, because I think one of the most important things is oil. I mean, if that supply chain gets disrupted, it can lead to a lot of inflation going ahead. Because I mean, again, here we are talking of the Red Sea route, which I mean, if that gets stopped, then the whole supply chain itself gets disrupted. So I think we need to watch possibly over the next 2 or 3 days whether it escalates or not. If it doesn't escalate, yes, I mean things come back to normal because again, as far as India is concerned, it's not in its backyard. But if it escalates, more number of countries get involved. Yes, I think it will affect us too.
Right. Dr. Swati Rao, um, we of course, Dr. Swasti Rao, apology for
No
mispronouncing
problem.
your name. Dr. Swasti Rao, with what's happening over the last 24 hours, we of course don't know what's the next course of action, but what is being foreseen that there could be attacks on oil refineries in Iran.
Yes.
This would not only be a blow to Iran, but this could be quite damaging world over.
Right. Good evening to you, Sneha, and thank you for your questions. Yes, I think a lot of people have been maintaining that the future course of this war is going to be determined to a large extent by how Israel now chooses to retaliate after what happened yesterday. So, two main things are actually up for discussion. One are the oil facilities in Iran, and the other are the nuclear facilities. With respect to the oil facilities, I think one should know where those oil facilities are and where exactly are they located. And usually, if you were to browse through the literature that is coming up about what are the important sites of strategic importance when it comes to oil facilities, there are actually three or four of them. One is situated in the Kurg Island, which is a 15 miles off the Iran's northern coast. And that is important because it handles over 90% of country's global crude oil exports. The second is a cluster of oil terminals, which is again situated in the southern province. The third is something which is more domestically focused, and similarly, there's another one. Now, if Israel chooses to destroy or partially destroy, one of these air facilities, particularly the bigger ones with the large base where you see all the export going from, it will definitely going to sort of lead to a catastrophic kind of an effect on the global oil market, because you already gave some figures about how Iran is an important player. That's the first thing. The other thing is that so far what we have seen is that because of this wonderful balance between supply and demand, we have not really seen too much of a jump in the price of the crude oil. Okay, so that's been one of the things that everybody's keeping a very close watch on. However, if things were to go out of hand in Israel's retaliation, this could also have a catastrophic effect on the global oil prices. Then we will have to see whether Saudi Arabia is willing to shore up supplies or not in order to
True.
maintain that price. So that is something on which we still have a question. We do not know whether that is going to happen. The other thing is about the kind of impact generally, if you talk about on India and Red Sea. And the gentleman before me was speaking about Red Sea. I think one thing is that the Indian maritime commerce has already suffered. I mean, one of the biggest setbacks that India suffered because of the fallout, the spillover from the Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, was that just months into that, the Houthi rebels came back, piracy returned to the Red Sea region, and they started targeting every possible ship except for explicit guarantees given to Chinese and Russian ships by the Houthi leader in January 2024. And as a result, even though we did try, because our external affairs ministers had gone, to Iran, but we still did not get any such, guarantee. And as a result, every single Indian
Right.
maritime
Right.
ship had to go all the way from Cape of Good Hope. So India is already bearing the brunt of all the, economic upheaval out there. And we are only, worrying whether this is going to get any worse.
Arun Kumar Rai, I mean, both the panelists have spoken about the Red Sea issue as well, but specifics of it, with what's happened in West Asia over the last few days, weeks, and the precursor to this, the 2023 Red Sea challenge that really happened, the Houthi attacks that happened, the challenge to trade has been almost a double whammy. Arun Kumar Rai, is it overreacting, or is it just natural and safe to say India is at the brink of possibly a massive inflation?
Of course, the recent activities or the recent happenings between Iran and Israel has brought world to a precipice, I would say, and India wouldn't be. It's not that India won't be affected. It's still wait and watch situation, I would say, because since October 23. The diversion which the maritime trade took place, that is, instead of Suez going via Cape of Good Hope, of course it has its own impact. I mean, the freight levels have gone up. Of course, of late they were coming down, and now the recent happening between these two countries would definitely escalate, and as Mr. Baliga said, definitely would have its impact on the inflation if the rates further go up.
Could you break this down for an audience who may not know the nitty-gritty of the industry? Just what does the escalation of these freight prices, these freight lines really mean to an average citizen? Could you break this down for us in terms of cost, in terms of the impact?
Absolutely. I would say, see, as far as the trade is concerned, the low value exports would definitely have impact, wherein the freight costs would be high, and so the orders would not be that much. Of course, like initially you had already established, war situation, the demand would be less, and if the prices are high, and at the end of the day, the common man has to pay higher prices for the products they're going to buy.
All right. J.K.
And
Tripathi,
of course,
if I can come to you at this point, J.K. Tripathi. Sure. Mr. Arun Kumar Rai, finish your sentence, please. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, what I was saying, it is not only to maritime, it will definitely, because of these recent attacks, the aviation industry would also have implications. So both the things will have repercussion as far as price hikes are there. Yeah, anticipation should be there. Yeah.
Right. J.K. Tripathi, so the Israeli Prime Minister has gone ahead and thanked India, has thanked Prime Minister Modi, and has valued the friendship. While that stays, what is India's outlook at this point? What is India really looking at? Short term, it may not really bear the brunt of it in a bigger sense, in a larger sense. But if this is long term, which it really looks like, the manner in which it's been unfolding over the last 2 years, it can have catastrophic impact. J.K. Tripathi, you may have to unmute yourself, please.
I have unmuted.
Yes, please. I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I could not.
Yes, please. Go ahead, sir.
Hear anything that Professor Raj said because there was some glitches in probably at your end. But now it is okay. Now, as regards what does it mean to India? First of all, let me clarify that as regards the import of crude oil or export of crude oil from Iran, as somebody said. I don't think the export of I don't think Iran is exporting much of the crude oil due to the sanctions. So that is a very minuscule, and that is going to affect to China. As regards India, yes, the supply line, the transportation line for the crude oil will be through Suez Canal and Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, and that will be a difficult point. That will be a difficult terrain because of the ongoing war situation. That will increase the oil prices. But I would like to say that during the last 3-4 years, we have seen ups and downs in oil prices, and finally, whatever comes, even sanctions from Russia, but then oil prices stabilized. They corrected the course world over. I've just seen that Brent cost is $75 per barrel today. You will remember that it used to be 65, 70 before Ukraine war, and then during war it went up to 90 or even 1,200, and then again it corrected the course. So I'm sure that course correction will happen. But then that might not happen as much as it did in case of Ukraine and Russia war. And because of Houthi and piracy involved here. So what I feel is that India is going to bear the brunt of this this increase in crude oil prices, which will certainly have a spiral effect. But in the longer run, because I think we have a big cushion of domestic consumption, I think in the longer run things will settle down. But certainly, as they say that a war pushes any warring country at least 10 years back in terms of in terms of its economy. As regards our relationship with Israel, is quite good,
Right.
but I don't think Israel will be able to ensure that oil supply to India from Suez and downward is uninterrupted. That Israel cannot do.
Right.
So we have to.
Right.
We have to bear the brunt of that. Yes.
Right. Amrish, right. In fact, Dr. Vandana Singh, while we just heard J.K. Tripathi and everybody speak about the possibility of oil prices soaring, I mean, one question everybody has is, and this is just one aspect of it, already India is struggling with the aviation prices, with the airlines prices. What are we really bracing for?
Thank you, firstly, Sneha, for having me on this show. Good evening to everyone. And yes, firstly, I would like to say that the aviation market, the aviation industry as such, is highly and hugely impacted. Basically, conflict anywhere reflects on peace everywhere. And this is clearly seen. I think we are walking a very tightrope. At this point of time, from the aviation perspective, we are seeing Israel, we are seeing Jordan, we are seeing Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, forget the Ukraine and others, all airspaces are closed. Now what is that translating to? That is translating to war surcharges, fuel surcharges, safety surcharges, security surcharges, and what have you. And apart from that, you're looking at the oil impact. I do feel that there's a huge impact because we are heavily reliant on the GCC countries as such. And a small disruption, as we have right now, we are seeing, say, 5% rise in crude oil prices. But if this goes on for a longer time, you're looking at 500,000 to 2 million barrels per day reduction in global oil supply. That's a small impact. You're looking at about 5 to 15% impact. That's a small disruption. Yes. If you look at a medium disruption, meaning that if it carries on for a longer scale or a larger scale, then you're looking at 3 to 5 million barrels per day reduction, driving the oil prices by 21 to 35%. And again, a larger disruption, if this continues larger than what we are talking about, then 6 to 8 million barrels per day reduction, leading to about 56 to 70% price surge. And when I'm talking about price surge in fuel, you're talking about rising costs in tickets. You're talking about longer routes that are being taken by the airlines. Already flights, let's say from India going into, let's say, London, or certain carriers, they are having to fly 2 hours longer, flying through Kuwait, Bahrain, and Egyptian airspace as we speak. So yes, the aviation industry is hugely impacted. I'm not even talking about the Red Sea crisis anymore, but I'm really talking of the current situation. And yes, we are looking at very tough times as we speak.
Well, that's going to be a little hard to brace for, but Dr. Swasti Rao, if I can come to you, and we are, of course, looking at the Middle East at this point, at West Asia at this point, but then you have the China factor and the Russia factor. And all of this is going to only add added pressure to how trade unfolds, to how India looks at it. What do you think at this point is the biggest challenge for India Inc. with respect to the international scenario?
So very, very quickly, you asked me about Russia factor, China factor, and India. So I will come to the Russia and China factor as well, because I think we need to understand that better. But with respect to India, of course, everybody has been mentioning how the oil prices or disturbance in the oil prices are going to generally impact the oil market generally, which is, of course, going to have a cascading effect on India. It is not about what we are getting from Iran. Of course, we're not getting anything much from Iran. We are basically getting oil from GCC and mostly, other countries. And also we're getting a lot from Russia, by the way. So, but that said, because the oil prices are sort of dependent on so many factors, so we will have to sort of bear the brunt. That's first. Other thing, of course, Red Sea crisis continues. Everybody's talked about that. So that's obviously one impact. The other impact is that on the one hand, we have with Iran, I mean, India follows a multi-vector kind of a foreign policy in that region, a kind of a multi-aligned foreign policy generally. I mean, we have good ties with Iran and we have invested in the Chabahar port, even though we sort of reduced the total budget of what we wanted to initially invest, but we still have invested significantly in the Chabahar port. We also wanted the Chabahar to be connected to the INSTC, which is a north-south trade corridor, starting from India and going all the way up to Russia. And that was...
Which also is going to take a toll now. It's going to be quite on a hold.
It is going to take a toll, not only because China and Russia remain sanctioned entities, but it also has other problems, Sneha, because it has Armenia and Azerbaijan as members, and Armenia and Azerbaijan are warring countries right now. So you have a lot of problems, and not just that. Also, if you look at closely what the trade route is, it's basically a kind of a road where trucks go, and exactly how much of cargo can you really send through trucks? So that, of course, there are problems. So that's one part which is going to have some effect. And the other is that with Israel, we were together in a strategic quadrilateral called the I2U2 with India, Israel, UAE, and the USA. And built on that was this IMEC project, which now seems to again be on the back burner, especially if you're looking at the Middle Eastern component. If you're looking at the Eastern component, which is that, this route which is connecting India to the UAE, it is working fine. In fact, there's also some activity on that front. If you're looking at the Western front of this IMEC, which is from Haifa onwards, I mean, after West Asia to Europe, which is through Piraeus or other ports, it is also, I think, should be seeing more activity because India is looking at developing more connectivity through other ports. So through Marseille in France and Trieste in Italy and Thessaloniki, apart from Piraeus in Greece. So what I'm saying is that, I mean, from India's perspective, it's both these things which will take a hit unless India is kind of thinking out of the box. And in that sense, I think IMEC, thinking of other legs of the IMEC perhaps is something something which is more promising right now. With respect to Iran, of course, we will be very, very cautious. Now, very quickly, if you give me 1 minute, I'll also talk a little bit about the Russia and the China factor here. You see, Iran right now is kind of isolated
Please.
in that region because Iran's three main proxies, which were the three H, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis, Israel have gone after all three of them, and we will see how that kind of unfolds. No big power in the region is interested in escalating the conflict. You look at the response of Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, UAE, all of them. Nobody is interested in supporting Iran or escalating the conflict. The US has a very heavy military presence throughout the region. In the Red Sea, they are there in the military bases. More than 40,000 American troops are there. Okay. And then, you have a situation where the Europeans are pretty much not really interested in escalating it anymore either. You have Russia that can support Iran, but Russian Prime Minister was in Iran too, and they have been talking about a comprehensive partnership. But right now, because Russia's preoccupation is with the war in Ukraine, there's very little Russia can really do to make a difference. Okay, that's the first thing. With respect to China, again, when we talk about Iran and Iranian oil, one must know that Iran is sending most of its oil only to China, not just openly, but also if you look at the shadow fleet that has emerged, even through the shadow fleet, most of the deliveries are actually going to China. And China is not really in a position to really militarily help Iran at all, because China is already very wary of how the Western world is sort of, pressurizing it to not give dual-use technology to Russia. But so what I'm trying to say is that we do have a situation which is fraught with a lot of tensions, Sneha, but at the same time, an all-out war doesn't really look like a possibility. But in that course, when you will see the economic cost of all this, of the delay, of the escalation of all of this, this is going to have a bearing on every part of the world, especially because we are connected in a globalized world, and particularly also for India. And just to make matters worse, let's remember that we were already in an unfinished project of recovery from COVID-19 when the Ukraine war happened. As we were struggling with the three F crisis of food, fuel, and fertilizer of the Ukraine war, we had a Hamas attack on Israel, and now we have a war which is unending. So basically, it's a very, very dystopian scenario. Back to you, Sneha. Yeah.
J.K. Tripathi, would you agree with what Dr. Swasti Rao has said at this point? Would you agree that despite the escalation, there seems to be largely a sense that Russia and China may not be able to cause that kind of an escalation where other countries may also act as a deterrent? Do you see both of these factors play out?
Certainly, I fully agree with Dr. Swati Rao because neither militarily nor economically Russia and China are in a position to cause any major changes in the Middle East. And secondly, you see, what I feel is one more factor which will affect India is not the oil import. The factor which will affect India is its exports, and especially maritime exports. With the upper northern Arabian Sea, having turbulence and which could be escalated, the shipping route from India to Europe will be difficult. It will be longer. It will take 14 more days to go via Cape of Good Hope, and that will make Indian exports costlier, and resultantly the foreign exchange coming in as a part of
huge
Indian
concerns.
Exports, less. So that's my take.
Right. Very quickly, we're running out of time. Ambrish Baliga, to end at this point, how is India Inc. looking at this? How is the business world, the trade world largely looking? What are their big concerns at this point?
No, in fact, I mean, if you see the last...
How are they bracing themselves practically?
If you look at the last couple of years, we've been extremely positive. Most of these wars hadn't really affected us. But this time, like I said, in case it escalates, yes, it will affect. And I think the sentiments will get affected, especially if the inflation starts shooting up because of the oil prices going up. So I think we need to just wait and watch for a while before we really can stick our neck out and say that this is exactly what will happen. I mean, in case things de-escalate, yes, I think we are back to normalcy and the business continues as it is. But in case it escalates, yes, I think we'll see some tough times because, I mean, the last couple of years we had an extremely good run. So, I mean, a fall or a correction could be decently be large.
Right. We're totally out of time. Dr. Swasti Rao, J.K. Tripathi, Arun Kumar Rai, Dr. Vandana Singh, and Ambrish Baliga. Thank you very much for joining us. We just hope we are not going in line with how the escalation really looks at. We really hope there's going to be restraint, and we really hope we're not going to be pushed into that inflation that many are extremely concerned about. But nonetheless, huge concerns at this point. Thank you very much for joining us. Time for a very short break. On the other side, we'll bring you all the latest and big stories.